Welcome to the Quantum Healthy Podcast. I'm Andia, a licensed addiction counselor, and along with my co-host, Laura Kissman, a quantum nutritionist, we will be inviting expert scientists, clinicians, survivors, and thrivers to distill their pearls of wisdom attained from applying quantum biology to their fields of research and everyday lives. Our goal is to bring you easy to understand principles and practices about the study of light, water, and magnetism so you can take your health into your own hands.
Welcome to the Quantum Healthy Podcast. Today we have Dr. Valerie Giangrande. She is an optometrist, a fellow Applied Quantum Biology grad with NDA and I like to call her an Instagram goddess, and we know her as the Quantum Eye Doc. And the reason I call her a goddess is because her posts are fabulous. And in the research for this, I kind of indulged myself, really just spending time. I didn't get through them all. I've got to go back, but there are so many really effective posts and thorough explanations. If people are interested in learning more about the eye and find this podcast intriguing, then I would highly suggest that's one of the places to start. So anyway, in my little research, which was really fun, I love my job, I found some interesting quotes by Valerie that I just want to just preface this discussion, because I'm hoping that we at least get to cover most of them, or she can, tell me that she didn't actually say these things and set the story straight. So the first one is, health begins in the eyes, and that's with proper sun signaling. The eye is not only a camera. Artificial blue light is a retinal toxin. Our eyes are hormone making organs. The eye has a microbiome, and the retina could well be the highest in mitochondria. And also just explaining that the eye is part of the brain. We don't think of it that way, but it's actually part of the brain. And we, of course, understand the brain and the heart to have the most mitochondria in the body. So anyway, so we hope to clarify and confirm these statements today in this discussion. Hopefully we'll draw all that out. And really, just if we could start, Valerie, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. Thank you. So as you said, I am an optometrist. I've been in practice for about 20 years. And again, this is just conventional optometry, where I learned that wearing sunglasses is really important, and all of the things that, I thought I knew, that was to be correct. Fast, maybe when I started having kids, and when I was an optometrist, and when my son was about 4, right now he's 16, he started getting some health issues. And I know I've said this before, but he had some neurological issues that weren't making sense.
Sorry,
and of course,
you said neurological?
Neurological, some things that just were happening that were really upsetting. And we couldn't get any answers from conventional medicine. So the only answers they had were, here's a prescription. So of course we didn't like that answer. So we ended up trying to go down the functional medicine route, which was fantastic. So we saw all the changes, diet and changing gluten and supplements and toxins and doing all of those things. So we go from one rabbit hole to the next, and we had some amazing changes that happened. But through all this, with all the stress, I had my own a few health issues, and I ended up going to my own functional medicine doctor. And luckily, he said to me, one of the first things he said was, how much sunshine do you get every day? And it was really kind of a surprising thing to hear, because I did not think that was something that I needed. And he said, I really think that that's one of your biggest problems. And at the time, I'm wearing sunglasses and sunblock. Now, as a kid, I got a lot of sun, but I'm almost 50. So this is, I guess, the past 20 or so years or 30 years of my life, I was in sunglasses and sunblock and just making sure that everything was blocked. And he introduced me to Dr. Jack Kruse. And then, of course, that's the rabbit hole that we tend to go down when you start getting into this world. And it's just such a really eye-opening, amazing place to just understand everything I thought I knew was wrong. So it's just life-changing information. And I started so that was around 2017 at this point. So I just made a lot of changes in my own life. My kids, all of us, we made all these changes, and we saw that everything was just feel so much better. So I started to educate patients. I just started to tell people about the sun and how important it is to get sun and do all of those things. And I've just been educating people all these years. But again, I don't have that much time to tell people. These are just little pieces of information over the years. And I just wanted to just learn as much as I can. So to the Applied Quantum Biology program, which was fantastic. And then I just want everyone to know, I just want to spread this, which is what made me start the Instagram page, which is kind of fun. It's just, I feel like remember scrapbooking?
Yeah.
I just feel like it's so much fun to make these posts. So I'm having a good time kind of making these posts, and then, the presentation, and just doing I'm just trying to spread this information as much as possible. So it's just life-changing.
We've interviewed Carrie Bennett, and she actually told us that her Instagram account, we complimented her on it. And it sounds very similar. It sounds like the two of you both have a right brain, left brain thing going on, because she said that she used to be an artist, and she finds, and I feel like you have very creative, very graphic, they jump out at you, all the posts. And so thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that extra talent. In your journey as an optometrist, there's another optometrist, or actually I think he's an ophthalmologist.
He's an ophthalmologist.
Yeah, there's a couple. I wanted to ask you, I know already, I've heard you speak about Dr. Jerry Tennant.
Mm-hmm.
I've only read Healing is Voltage. I was first introduced to him about another book that is about vision.
Right. So it's Healing is Voltage, and it says eye diseases. I think that's
eye
the name.
diseases. Yeah.
It's something about.
Yeah, I haven't read that one. Yeah. So what did that awaken this optimum, or the quantum eye doc, or?
Yeah, I mean, that was part of it. That was something that was just so mind-blowing. Some of the information he had in that book was stuff that I just didn't even think of or didn't learn at all. So it really changed the way I thought about a few different conditions in general. It's really, really interesting. But I think the Quantum Biology Collective is what turned me on to Dr. Jerry Tennant. So most of those things, and then that's what made me read his book, and that's what made me say, oh my gosh, there's even more that I didn't, so much I don't know, of course, but little, I'm just trying to get as much information as possible from, everybody, I guess. I just love this community. It's so fantastic. But Dr. Jerry Tennant is great. And Dr. Jane Montgomery.
Yes, I wanted to ask you about him, because I stumbled on, I first learned about him on my course way back. I think I was on the first course. So I don't know how much has changed, if you guys watched the same videos that I watched, but he had some key ones. But that led me just Googling more. I came across I think it was a 2-hour lecture that he gave to different, is he an ophthalmologist?
He's an ophthalmologist, and I've watched that 3 or 4 times.
I know, a ton of notes, and oh my goodness.
Fantastic.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that, because I think he's a real gem in the eye, in the vision community. And
I'm sorry to interrupt. An optometrist that works for him actually reached out to me, and we're now friends on Facebook. And I was so excited to have somebody who works for him. I thought it was just so amazing.
You two have to meet. We have to connect you two. I actually, just a little side note, I followed him all through COVID on Twitter. And I found him fascinating to follow, and he's a truth speaker, and I have so much admiration for what he's brought to the quantum biology collective, but what he's teaching the world.
Absolutely.
He's a hero of mine for sure. I hope you're listening, Dr. J. Montgomery. Okay, we got so much to cover tonight. Super, super excited about this. Let's talk about the eye. Can you just educate us a bit on the quantum eye, in terms of that there's multiple layers to the eye? Maybe could you touch on the microbiome aspect, because that blew me away when I heard you say that, because I never thought about that. I only think about the gut microbiome as a nutritionist. And just this whole idea, that first statement that I read about the fact that the eye is not just a camera. Could you touch on those 3? I'll remind you if
Sure.
Starting with the layers.
Yeah. So the eye itself is an extension of our skin. It's our mucous membranes. It's the cardiovascular system. It's brain tissue. It's nerve tissue. It's everything all combined. So we have all the different layers. And just in the very first layer, again, that's an extension of skin. We have our conjunctiva, our cornea, our eyelids. There is a microbiome that has, in healthy people, they've done a lot of studies on the different types of bacteria that are found, and there's even viruses, and there's some fungus, and just all kind of in their own little ecosystem. And when those bacteria are when there's an overgrowth, just like in the gut or on the skin, if there's an overgrowth of any of these different bacteria or anything that takes over, there are some links to some ocular surface disease issues. I don't know the list. I mean, I have a list of the bacteria and stuff. I'm not going to go through the names, but it really is its own ecosystem. So that's on the front layer, and our tear film, again, is that very first layer that we're exposed to, and we need that tear film to keep our eyes very moist, and it cools the surface of the eye. It's that first surface that light is hitting. So that's what's covering our cornea. And then we have our pupil, which is what is responding to light. That's our black box. That's it's controlled by the sympathetic system and the parasympathetic system. So again, we need it's one of the most important ways we're getting the correct amount of light. And that goes through our lens. It's where when you hear about cataracts, that's where the lens, the collagen fibers can get very oxidized and we can get some blur. And then we have the vitreous, which is that ball of jelly right behind the lens. It kind of makes up a really large portion of the eye. It's full of hyaluronic acid and collagen and water. And that's what's slowing down light before it hits our retina. And with the retina is kind of wired a little backwards. We have our photoreceptors, and then the very last layer of the retina in the very back of the eye is this retinal pigment epithelium. And those are the cells that really collect our light. That's where melanin is. And that's what's connecting the retina to the blood flow underneath to the choroid level, to the choroid layer. So all of those layers have to work, obviously to take in our light, slow it down, get it to the retina so that it can get to the brain. But melanin plays a large role in that. I'm actually forgetting your other questions.
Okay, well, you know what?
Can
I interrupt for a sec?
Please.
Okay, you actually had an Instagram post. It's just reminding me right now. And the question was, and you did, I don't know that I saw the answer. So I was reading, I got so involved in the comments that I never found out what the answer was. I think I know what it is. But so the question was, which layer of the eye can be negatively affected by artificial light at night? And we're going to get to that subject. And so you went through all these 7 layers, the last being the optic nerve, right?
Yes. I didn't even mention the optic nerve. My gosh. Yes.
Okay. Optic nerve. And then, so it had the 7, and then the last possibility was all of the above. So I was going to ask you, what is the answer?
It's definitely all of the above. I mean, it has an effect. Light plays a role in every aspect of our body, and the eyes, again, every single layer of the eye can be affected negatively by the wrong light, and it's affected positively by the correct light.
Okay. So we're gonna get to blue light, but before, so yeah, no, I think you said it. Oh, maybe just that it's not a camera. Not a camera.
Right. So in the sense, everybody knows of the eye that we take in light, and that those light signals go to the brain, and that's how we see through our photoreceptors, and our brain is kind of telling us what we see. But we also have clock cells in our eyes that are actually running our entire body, and that's where we have it. It's like it's an organ that's running every single aspect of our body, because we're collecting light. We have these certain cells that are collecting light from sunshine, ideally. And it's an electrical signal that gather it from the sun. It goes right to the brain, and it is running our entire body. It sets the clock for our brain. So our body runs on time based on sunlight through our eyes. So our eyes become this organ that is a timekeeper. It does so many different things, which I think we'll get to. But as far as it being much more than just how we see, it's a hormone making organ. It's, again, a timekeeper. It does all of such amazing things, and we need our eyes to be working properly in order for the entire body to be working properly, which is a pretty big statement, but it's true. It's just amazing.
It's almost like we hear that, health starts in the mouth. Health starts in the eye.
Yeah. I mean, there is a big connection between the mouth and the eye as well.
There is?
There is. So there's all these meridians of energy flow. And for people who have a poor dental health, again, even that, getting back to that microbiome, if there's a lot of decay in the mouth, it can actually create a lot of inflammation in the eyes. There are some conditions, something like uveitis, where they find that a lot of those causes are from poor dental health. So right? There's a big link to to dental health and eye health.
Is uveitis the same thing as iritis?
Yes.
Because it's in the iris of the eye, right?
Yeah. So it's an inflammation of the uvea. So that it could be in all different parts. Yes. Iritis, uveitis. Okay. Correct.
And often goes with autoimmune?
It often goes with autoimmune.
Right. I've heard
Yes,
ankles
but
and
they
stuff,
also
right?
find a lot of times people will get blood work to see what it is and they can't find anything, and it can be linked to decay. Some people have just had a root canal, something like that, where it just creates issues. And I had a patient once who had food poisoning and we couldn't figure it out. And the food poisoning disrupted her gut microbiome. And again, there's a gut axis, everything's connected. And that's what caused her iritis. So there's a lot of different kind of energy flow and everything connected. But yes, the mouth and gut, the liver and the eye,
Yeah.
the mouth and the eye.
Fascinating. Okay. Okay. Let's get into a big topic that we talk about in the quantum biological health space, which is blue light toxicity. It's just the impact of artificial light. And we also I use this acronym ALAN, artificial light at night. Can you tell
Correct.
us from your understanding, why is it particularly bad for the eyes to have blue light after, let's say, sunset?
Okay, absolutely. So first, the way blue light is working in our eyes, as soon as blue light hits our retina or hits a photoreceptor in our eyes, it actually separates vitamin A from that photoreceptor. And the way that the way the body works with photoreceptors that are collecting light, vitamin A is bound to this photoreceptor, and blue light separates that vitamin A. When vitamin A is separated from a photoreceptor, it becomes this toxic form and it actually goes and damages the cells around it. Now, when we have full spectrum sunlight, it's not an issue because the sunlight is always full of infrared light. It has red light, and sometimes it also has ultraviolet light. But red light and infrared light is the antidote to that inflammation, or the negative effects of blue light are always going to be balanced by red and infrared. But when we're talking about an artificial light, there is no infrared and there is no red to balance any of that inflammation out. So it becomes very damaging. So in addition to the vitamin A, it's also very oxidizing. It also damages our mitochondria. And we know that we need our mitochondria to be working well for the entire body to be working well. So now we have this artificial light that's creating inflammation, doing all of these things, but it's also how we tell time. So because of those melanopsin receptors in the eye, waiting for the specific amount of blue light from sunrise, that's what's telling our body what time it is. Artificial blue lights are the color temperature of the sun at about 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So that every single time we're exposed to it, those melanopsin cells are saying, all right, I guess it's 12 o'clock in the afternoon. I guess it's lunchtime. And what happens at night when there's no blue light in the world, the sun is gone. There's no blue light. The body's expecting to see darkness. And when we are looking at blue light, our body thinks it's 12 o'clock in the afternoon all over again. So now we're going to do all of the things that we did in the middle of the day or early in the day, where we're releasing cortisol, releasing hormones, which is disrupting the entire body. So it does all of that. And from an eye standpoint, because everything starts in the eye, we're going to create a lot of inflammation in the eye. We're going to mess with our mitochondria in the eye. We're going to reduce our water production, which is mitochondria. When it's working well, we know it makes water, it hydrates our cells. It creates energy. It does all of these beautiful things. And blue light does the opposite of that. So we're just going to get so much damage to the eyes when we're looking at this artificial signal for so many reasons, for dehydration, for messing with our hormones, from messing with our mitochondria, for disrupting melatonin. So when the body sees this blue light at night, the brain can't release melatonin. Melatonin is our hormone that we release after a few hours of darkness. So that the body's saying, I really want to I'm tired. I would love to go to sleep, but here's some blue light again. It must be lunchtime. So we cannot release that melatonin. And we know how important melatonin is to really just heal our body overnight. It does everything we need it to. It's repairing the entire body while we sleep. So blue light does so many horrible things. It's just so far from nature. We're not meant to absorb just a single spectrum of blue light at the wrong time of day, and it's unbalanced. So it creates a really horrible damage.
Two things on that. One is, got to give credit to Dr. Jack Kruse in my learning journey on all of this.
Oh yeah.
Talking about blue light being the worst non-native electromagnetic frequency until 5G came. I don't know if he still,
Yes.
I think he still says, blue light.
I think so. I think
he does. And just this whole idea of making vitamin A go rogue, and vitamin A is a good thing, but not if it's unbound, right? If it's broken to
right.
a covalent bond.
Mhm.
And so with melanopsin. So anyway, wanted to share that. And I'm so glad you highlighted that. And what was my other point? So back to your Instagram as the the Instagram goddess, at the Quantum Eye Doc, you had a series of amazing posts on melatonin, because you just mentioned how important melatonin is, and it's like
Mhm.
acting like an antioxidant. And so I painfully, went through and just copied like what of these 10 posts. I mean, they were so good. Can you just share a little bit on how
Sure.
fabulous melatonin
Oh
is,
gosh,
why
absolutely.
it's so needed?
So the beautiful thing about melatonin, one, we think of it as a night hormone, but it's also made from infrared light during the day. So when we have that full spectrum sun, infrared light is making melatonin in our mitochondria in this subcellular way where it's not getting into our bloodstream. It's actually helping the mitochondria reduce. It's the best antioxidant we can have. So that's one thing. So it's made throughout the day for getting light, and then again, it's released at night. So melatonin, the retina is full of mitochondria, as you mentioned before. We need mitochondria to be working perfectly in the eye in order for it to work. I mean, think about all of the light that's constantly being, bombarding those photoreceptors. They have to be regenerated. And the mitochondria have to work really hard. And in every layer of the eye, we have to work the mitochondria. They're in all parts of the eye, but for melatonin is actually going to regenerate our photoreceptors while we're sleeping. So if we're not sleeping,
Oh,
we're not
wow.
regenerating our photoreceptors. And then what happens? Anything that's damaging our mitochondria or our photoreceptors can't regenerate, all of those things, that's where we're going to start getting damaged. That's where the cells just aren't active. They're not safe.
Right.
So melatonin is going to do so many things. So one, it's going to quench all that oxidative stress that we're getting overnight, during the day. It's going to help reduce the ability. Some people, diabetics, can get bleeding in the eye. It helps reduce the signal to actually make more blood vessels. It helps with our tear film. It helps lower eye pressure. I mean, there's so many studies that, melatonin is protective of nerve tissue. People who have glaucoma have very low levels of melatonin and they don't sleep very well. And again, melatonin is protecting nerve tissue. Melatonin is getting rid of cancer cells. Melatonin is cleaning out our mitochondria, getting rid of sick mitochondria, fixing it, or killing off the cells that we don't need. It's doing everything that we need it to do. And because there's so much oxidation happening throughout the day, we need something to quench that, and we need melatonin to do that. So that's where the full spectrum light comes in. I'm trying to think if I forgot anything else. I mean, it helps with everything, really. Our whole immune system,
Right. That was going to say.
Right, the immune system, and there's so many eye issues that are related to the immune system. We have, allergic conjunctivitis. We have even dry eyes. That's kind of an inflammation of the body. So usually all of the conditions that happen in the eye are linked to inflammation. A lot of that, and oxidative stress is fixed by melatonin. So that's one of the most important things we can do for the eyes, is get good sleep and make sure we're getting that infrared and full spectrum light. And we know.
Okay, that's the segue I needed. Because I want to ask you about sunlight. And so I think you like us, you're an advocate for getting adequate, good quality sunlight throughout the day. And so with not getting enough sunlight, kind of why and how does this deficiency affect the eye? I mean, you've alluded already on the melatonin side, but can you give us any? And I guess I'm trying to get out your famous quote that came out on the Quantum Biology Collective that she said at least twice, because she was so shocked when you said it.
Yes, that was so good.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we need, where do I begin? I feel like it's such a jumble. So we need full spectrum sunlight to be healthy, right? We need every aspect of the sun. We need our red light, we need infrared light, we need ultraviolet light. So the eye is equipped to handle full spectrum sun. That's what we're designed for. We've been conditioned to be very afraid of ultraviolet light, and that's where I feel like the education needs to really be very strong, because most people are wearing sunglasses. So, in our modern world, what are we doing? We're waking up and we're turning on our lights, and we're not getting that. Our brains are just all mixed up because we don't know what time it is. But in a perfect world, we have receptors in our eyes that are designed to absorb ultraviolet light. So when the sun is rising about an hour after sunrise, in addition to all the beautiful benefits of sunrise with the red and the infrared and starting our day and just kind of absorbing that red and infrared to help us get ready for those stronger light signals, we have that ultraviolet A signals. Now, our eyes have neuropsin. We have these UVA receptors right on the front surface of our cornea to collect ultraviolet A light. We also have amino acids in our eyes that, again, are waiting for this UVA light to come in to collect that light. And the reason why that's so important is because when we're exposed to ultraviolet A light very early on, we're actually making hormones in our eyes. So I'll say the eye is a hormone making organ when we're exposed to ultraviolet A light. And again, if we're wearing sunglasses all the time, we're not getting those signals.
Right.
So what I mean by hormones, and it's also neurotransmitters as well. So our eyes, the amino acid tryptophan is going to make serotonin in the eyes. It starts getting made in the eyes. And that serotonin will ultimately get transferred to melatonin. So we cannot sleep unless we had sunshine in the morning. And we have tyrosine as an amino acid that's, again, collecting that ultraviolet A light. And what is that making? That's making dopamine, which is incredible. And then we have melanin, which is, again, such an amazing thing that helps us not only absorb sunlight safely, but melanin in itself is a very kind of magical molecule, which is fantastic. It also helps regulate our thyroid hormone. And what is that? That's helping the entire body. And that ultraviolet A light, an ultraviolet light, is going to stimulate the body to release these beta endorphins and all these amazing chemicals and hormones through the eyes if we're getting the right signal. So I think it's really important that if we're blocking that signal and we're wearing our sunglasses all the time, and the only light that we're getting is this indoor artificial signal of light, we're not getting any of those benefits, and our body's just very confused. It's not a good signal. So we need that ultraviolet light.
On the windows, can you just, I think I know, but maybe you can help anybody listening. What is blocked by windows?
Yeah, so windows are blocking, I don't know the exact percentage of infrared, but most of the infrared, I want to say maybe 72% of the infrared light is being blocked, maybe even more than that.
Okay.
It's blocking all of the UVB. It's letting through some UVA, but it's mostly letting through blue light. So most people will say, oh, I open my blinds in the morning, I'm getting that sunshine. And it's like, no, you're really not. You're not getting the benefit. We need that infrared. We need that ultraviolet. And again, we don't need that much of it. We do have to be careful that there's ways to do it safely, and I'm not suggesting that we stare at the sun, but we need to be outside. Most importantly, that's what we're designed to be. Our eyes, there's no reason for us to be fearful of the sun, especially early in the morning, when it has all these health benefits. The sun has been shown to reduce like all-cause mortality, right? So we need it. We need that sunshine, and we need it through our eyes. And then when we are in the middle of the day, if we are trying to get that stronger UV, which again is kind of a time where most people hesitate, they get a little worried, but in order to make vitamin D in our skin, we also can't have our sunglasses on to block that UV signal through our eyes, because the other beautiful thing that it does is it helps our body, again, to absorb UV without burning. If we do it properly, we release histamine turns into uricanic acid, which is kind of like a UV protector on our skin. And all of those beautiful things happen when we have that signal coming through our naked eyes. That means no contacts. If you're wearing glasses, you want to pull them down, and no sunglasses at those times. So really important. Not everybody likes to hear that.
Well, and when I was asked about the windows, it's like the same thing as glasses, right? Like they're blocking a lot of those things. And it's nice to see there's some new technologies coming out. I know this company, the glasses that I'm wearing, Viva Rays, they've actually got a glass, like you can wear a glass with prescription, a prescription in it that allows UV light in. And I know it sounds crazy because everybody's thinking, oh, we have to block the UV. It's so nice to hear this other side of the story that, we need to have naked eyes in the sun throughout the day, parts of the day, to get those keys for the key signaling. Doesn't, like you say, don't stare at the sun. That's not the message that any of us want to bring out in the podcast. So I think, I don't know if it was you, did you say it, or did Meredith on the Quantum Biology Collective, that sunglasses are fashion accessories that we are into? Okay, I don't know if I should credit you. Okay.
No, she said it. She's right. I mean, it's just it's become a fashion statement. It really has. Sunglasses, right? Everyone loves it. And again, and I understand it. And there are times where if you're on the snow, if you're skiing, if you're in a place where there's tons of reflections, if you're on the water, too much UV is obviously going to be damaging, but I think we go overboard. It's same thing with sunblock. We go overboard. We're told to hide from every last bit of it. And I think that's such a horrible recommendation for our health. We just know how important it is.
I was actually I was on a glacier when I was 13. I was an incredible opportunity in northern Italy, and it was a ski racing kids camp. They were trying to get British kids to learn how to ski race, and I just happened to. My parents lived in England at the time, and it was at 11,000 feet. And one day, we all wore sunglasses, and we only were allowed to ski from 8 till noon. And after that, we had to get off the mountain and do other activities and out of the sun because it was so bright. And this one boy, little British kid, he didn't wear sunglasses. And I don't know, nobody caught it, but he went snowblind. I'll
Oh,
never forget that. And he had to actually go into a
gosh.
room in a dark room and just wait. It got better, but it
Yeah,
scared. I remember being scared of that. So I do think about when I am downhill skiing
right.
at altitude that, when it feels that bright, it's like that respect that message,
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. And if people are driving and they feel comfortable with sunglasses on because the glare is blinding and you feel like it's safe to
right.
drive, then of course, there are definitely situations where they would be okay. But there's so many times if you go outside for sun breaks, especially if we spend so much time inside, we need to get outside. You have to just give your eyes that signal, even if it's for short periods of time throughout the day, even if it's strong. And just again, everybody's different as far as how much UV they can handle. Of course, this isn't a blanket statement. It has to be done safely, and everyone has their own level of melanin and their own health issue, so all there's some nuance to it, but the key is everyone can use sunrise light. There's no UV in that early morning sun for the whole first hour, I think everywhere. And it's super important to get that. And again, if people are afraid of UV, you don't have to be afraid of that early morning signal. And then when that UVA shows up, it's mild, it's UVA, it's just a little
Yeah.
bit, but it's so important. We don't need much, but we absolutely need it.
With the UVA, my understanding is well, just certainly on the skin, it has a effect on nitric oxide production.
Yes,
Is
yes.
that
So
something that you know more about? You could explain?
So when it hits the skin, nitric oxide is released, which automatically dilates our blood vessels. And it actually comes into play with the eyes as well, because it's very helpful for so many things. So when it dilates blood vessels, ultraviolet light in general is going to dilate our blood vessels and it will reduce blood pressure, which is a beautiful side effect. But what's happening is all those red blood cells are rushing to the surface of our skin to collect light because it's so important. So when that does happen, when we are getting sun and the blood vessels are able to come to the surface and we get that pinkening response, that's a histamine response, so that we know we can stop getting sun. That's kind of that built-in safety. But the nitric oxide itself is going to help gather more nutrients and more throughout the whole body. Those red blood cells are collecting light to go to the entire body. Nitric oxide is actually really important with glaucoma because it's actually going to lower pressure. It's going to increase flow and oxygen flow. So there's a lot of studies trying to use nitric oxide to help. But honestly, if we're lacking UV, that's why a lot of us are lacking nitric oxide. So, all of these things that they're finding is, well, if you just get some sunshine, you would be able to get that nitric oxide and have that effect. So nitric oxide is very useful, even on the retina as well, because the choroid vessels in the macula, the way the retina works, the very center of the eye, the macula has no blood vessels, and it gets its blood supply underneath from the choroid, which is this really dense area of vascular tissue. Nitric oxide will actually help dilate those vessels and bring more blood flow. So it's a very, everything works together. And I believe that, all of the circulation in the body goes through the choroid. So when you're sunning your eyes or you're outside and getting sun and you're gathering the infrared and the ultraviolet and all of those beautiful signals, the entire body is getting those signals because that blood flow is going through the entire body. I forget exactly how long it takes, but it's just,
Beautiful.
it's just a window to
Right.
our health. We really need that.
That's right. The blood goes through. I've heard that. I think it was Dr. J.
Mhm.
Montgomery. I think learned that from.
I
Blood
think
goes
exactly.
through
I
the
don't
eye.
remember exactly how long it took. I can't remember
Nice.
how long he said it took, but
And
thought
then,
that was really
yeah,
interesting.
really cool. Okay, and then just before we leave sunlight, because sunlight is so important. The other thing I wanted to ask you about is just the whole the exclusion zone water in the eye. How does
Mhm.
that connection work with sunlight and then eye health?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we know that, as soon as we're exposed to that full spectrum sunlight, the red part of the spectrum will actually help our mitochondria make more of that exclusion zone water. So the exclusion zone water is the water that turns into this beautiful gel, this battery around all of the tissues in our eye, not in our entire body. So all of the tissues in the body that have a water that attract water are covered by this beautiful gel, or this battery has a nice charge to it. So we need our mitochondria to work really well to make tons of exclusion zone water. We have a fascia. The whole fascial network in our body is full of exclusion zone water. The first layer of the eye is the cornea. It's full of collagen. Our lens is full of collagen. The vitreous is a ball of collagen and hyaluronic acid. The retina needs water because melanin, when it's surrounded by water, That's how we get our energy. It's just how everything, we need the voltage and the electricity to happen in exclusion zone water. So we know that red light helps the mitochondria make more water. We know that infrared light helps expand that water, make that water denser and thicker. And we know that ultraviolet light will help gather more electrons in this water. So again, when we're lacking any of those of the full spectrum sun, we're not making exclusion zone water. We get dehydrated, and it's not a matter of drinking more water, but we get dehydrated. Our tear film dries out, our cornea dries out, our lens gets dehydrated, our vitreous can get dehydrated. That's where you get floaters. The retina can't, the electricity is gone, and so many things can go wrong without that exclusion zone. So again, that's one of the other really important things that we just need to keep ourselves healthy. Blue light dehydrates the body. And again, Wi-Fi also dehydrates the body as well, which is just that other form, which we're all exposed to every day.
Unless
so that's another
off, right?
Right, unless you turn it off. So those are the things that so anything that's away from nature, all this unbalanced light is going to dehydrate us. So yes, exclusion zone water is really so important for the eyes, for the entire body. Absolutely.
That was fantastic explanation. Thank you for that. Oh my goodness. Okay, we want to pick your brain on some of the implications, like the positives, the negatives, the nuances of optometry, and even maybe ophthalmology is my understanding is it's the surgical part.
The surgery, yeah.
Right. Okay. I know you don't do that part, but just some of the interventions. So you've pretty much covered all my questions on sunglasses. So we'll leave that one.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just fiddling with my light because it's dark now.
I'm
getting darker, so
I may open. I had sunset coming in, so
I'm going to switch to my night glasses here.
Nice.
There we go. I don't know if it's officially dark yet, but it looks like it's getting dark.
Good for you. I'm going to switch in a minute, but I still have some light. So, but yeah, I just wanted to ask you about blue blockers. This is what we're talking about right now. So I have my day lenses. You've got your sunset lenses on. So can you're I'm guessing you're a fan of blue blockers.
Yes.
Is there any negatives of blue blockers? Any little nuances as an optometrist that you would share with us?
So we have to be careful. So in the optometry world, the recommendation is just wear blue blockers with no distinction between night and day. So we know at night we don't want any blue, right? So we know we need the orange or even the red ones, which I know we were talking about earlier, that are really dark before bed. So we know at night we have to, without a doubt, wear night blockers. That's a definite must. During the day,
to follow nature's laws.
To follow, exactly. When it's dark outside, we want our eyes to be exposed to darkness. We even want our skin to be exposed to darkness and all of that, our bedroom's dark, everything.
Right.
And then if we're waking up before sunrise and we're walking around the house and we're doing things, we want to put them back on so that we don't have the first signal of our day to be any kind of artificial signal of light. So I feel like that's the most important time to wear them.
Right. Okay.
During the day on a computer, I do recommend wearing them. I do. However, if someone has, say, Iris technology on their screen, like say they downloaded a program like Iris Tech, which will mimic the entire spectrum of the sun throughout the day, and if they're sitting by an open window, or if they're not really exposed to all these horrible lights all day, then I think Iris technology might be enough. But if a lot of people will say, well, do I still need them if I have these filters on my screen? And say, well, what about all the other lights that you're exposed to? If there's overhead lights, so you really should be blocking some of it during the day. You never want to block all of it during the day because we need some of it to tell us we're awake. But I think the most important thing is that we also have to make sure we're getting outside because we need blue light. We need that brightness of the sun, especially in the morning, to wake us up, to do all the things that we need. So we don't want to wear them. We don't want to only wear blue light blockers and then never get sunshine. So it has to be that balance. So what I do, I'm unfortunately in a dark room for 3 full days a week, 3, sometimes 4 days a week. So I'll wear them, but at lunchtime, usually I will go outside, but if for some reason I can't, I'll take them off around lunch because that's when the blue's pretty bright. I'm like, I could handle a little bit of blue at this time. So I don't wear them, I guess, 100% of the time, but I do have them on for most of the day because the lights are just horrible in our office.
And are you, in your job, like, despite the lights, when you're looking, you're looking, I don't know what that piece of equipment is called. And you're
looking through a slit lamp.
Is a sun lamp, you call it? Is it a lot of blue light?
It's a slit lamp.
Slit lamp, yes.
I mean, it's a microscope with lights. Yeah. It's a lot of blue. I just, when I think back to all the So all the damage of all these years of myself just being in this dark room all day and looking through these blue lights, I just, it's still a work in progress. Like I'm doing all these things, but it's still, there's a lot of damage that had to be reversed with all
I
the
feel like
years.
you're kind of like a neurosurgeon who has to have bright light, or surgeons, to work, and you're the same way, right? In the sense that you,
Oh,
in
so
order to score,
for each part
or
of every exam,
hygienist
you
or
have to go through
dentist.
that, but a lot of it is in the dark, and I don't know if that's any better. I mean, then I have darkness in the day. Like it's,
Right.
and then the lights are on and off. So it's a very confusing, I don't think many people are in that kind of situation. So it's a very confusing, dysregulating place
So it's
to
good,
be.
good for you to take sun breaks, quantum breaks, and
Right. Try to get outside as much
do
as
what you
possible.
can,
Exactly.
right? Okay.
Mhm.
Mitigate. Okay. All
Right.
right. Okay. Just a quick question on eye
Yeah.
exams. As a patient, I know as an eye doctor, you're going to tell us we have to get our eyes.
No, I'm
And
supposed to
I've
say
been putting
here.
it off. I've been putting it off. I need you as an eye doctor to tell me, Laura, go get your eyes checked. But I guess, is there any risk to when you get your eyes checked? Some of these, where they do these scans and stuff, is that a lot of blue light? Is there any damage that can happen in those, or
So
should I not ask that question?
that's a great question. That's a great question. And I think of that sometimes, like we have this beautiful, and I think you're talking about the camera, it's called an optomap. It's
That's
fantastic.
right.
The retinal image. Yeah,
It's so good.
I would imagine that it's blowing blue light across the entire retina in very quickly. So all of your photoreceptors are being, I guess, triggered or firing at once, but it's for a split second. And I would imagine that as long as we're okay, we can regenerate. I think it's so amazing to have this image. It's
Yes.
this digital camera. And then we have the OCT. I know Dr. Kruse talks about that one a lot, where you have the cross section, you see the retinal, layers of the retina. And it's such an amazing diagnostic tool. So I think I do it on myself a lot.
Okay.
Because I don't necessarily, yes.
I love
Don't you
that
love it?
picture of the retina. I posted it on my Instagram, my eye.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So I mean, I have to look into, I have to assume it's blue light, I'm sure, but
Well,
I
and
don't know.
just do it during the day, right? Don't book your appointment at
Right,
night, maybe.
right.
Just
Dilating the eyes, I'm sure the chemicals in those drops may not be great, but again, it's important to just make sure that there's nothing going on.
Good.
We're supposed to say every year. Some people come in every 2, if you really have nothing going on, but you never know if there's something going on. Some things have no symptoms, in the retina. And I'll never forget, I had a woman, 40-year-old mom, who had a melanoma. And I've been in practice 20 years. I've seen maybe 2 or 3 retinal choroidal melanomas, but this was a melanoma in the uveal, right behind the iris. And you couldn't see it. There were no symptoms. And looking in the eye, her retina was perfect. I really thought she was completely fine. And something I just said, let's take a photo. Some people don't want to do that. Some people don't want to be dilated. And we always have to say, really need to be dilated. We need to make sure you're okay. But something just told me, like, let's just take a photo before you go. Let's make sure, let's not. And you can see it on the photo. And then we dilated. And I still couldn't see it unless you turned a certain way. And thank goodness, I thank myself, because she's okay, but she would not have been okay. It was huge. And with no symptoms. So in those little things, we had no idea. So I'll never forget that when people say, I really don't want to be dilated, or I don't want to take a photo, I say, you just never know. You just never know.
You've just convinced me. That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So corrective eyewear.
Mhm.
I guess we've talked a little bit about glasses.
I have one question about contacts.
Yeah.
Because I can't remember
contacts.
when or where I heard this, but I wore contacts for many, many, many years. I pretty much wore them all day, every day. I never slept in them. But I heard on
Mhm.
something about when you wear contacts, you're not only, inconveniencing yourself from going for your light breaks to get all this natural light we've been talking about in your eyes, but there's an oxygen component. Can you talk about that? What's happening when you wear a contact
Yeah.
all the time?
Right. So a lot of the companies do try to come up with more oxygen transmission in their lenses, but you are losing oxygen. You're definitely changing that oxygen component, especially in contexts. And luckily you don't sleep in them, but there are people who do, and you're really losing oxygen overnight. The oxygen you're getting is from the blood vessels under your lid. But yeah, you're changing oxygen flow. And the other thing that's happening is that the body senses something foreign in the eye. So some people end up getting those calluses. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but a lot of people after many years will say, I feel like something's in my eye, or the
Yes,
eye
I went through that.
develops. Yeah, you develop these bumps that they're called like a GPC is the name for it. Just these papillae, these little bumps, because again, the body is just doing what it's doing based on the environment we give it. I just quoted Dr. Kruse the other day I loved his quote about that. If there's a piece of plastic in the eye and the body's saying what every time you blink, the body feels this trauma. So in order to protect itself, it creates these calluses or these bumps, which are a protective mechanism, but they're not comfortable. And then you really can't wear contacts. So it's interesting what I think contact lens overwear is an issue. So the way we see that there's a lack of oxygen is you start to see under the microscope that there's blood vessels starting to grow into the cornea. And we do not want blood vessels in the cornea, because the cornea, the reason why we see is because it's really just, it's collagen in this perfect form that allows light to pass through it. So if there's blood vessels that start forming, that's where you're introducing, stuff that's not good. That's not good for the eyes. So that's kind of a sign when you start to see what we call this neovascularization, where you see this ring of vessels growing into the cornea, that, hey, you're wearing your contacts a little too much and you need more oxygen. So that's kind of the clue of what the body's, again, trying to help itself by bringing nutrients which shouldn't be there.
Thank God. No, I've never had those bumps, and I actually never
Mhm.
could have slept in my contacts if I wanted to, because there were a few nights where I fell asleep with them in on accident, like watching TV on the couch or something like this. And I
Right.
would wake up and I could hardly open my eyes. My eyes would get so dry that they'd actually just pop right out by themselves.
Mhm.
And but since I've learned all of this information about just basically the eye through a quantum lens, I
Mhm.
have tried not to wear my glasses, and I never wear my contacts. I haven't bought contacts. I used to always buy contacts and glasses at my eye exam. Don't even think about contacts anymore. It's inconvenient, and in my opinion, unhealthy kind of for me. I just don't need them.
Yeah.
But
I,
you have a low prescription, Andy?
Well,
I actually have, yeah.
it's not low. I'm not blind, but things are blurry if I don't have my glasses on.
You take them off for reading though? Do you take them off when you read? Because I think the thing with glasses is that I try to tell people is just wear them when you truly need them. I think the kids are getting worse with
Yes.
myopia because they're wearing them too much. Or
Yep.
they're reading with them when they're meant for distance. And aside from the whole light issue, because that's another
Yeah.
myopia we need full spectrum sunlight to help slow that down. For different reasons, but we also are using them too much. All of this reading and close work is stimulating the muscles to kind of make things worse, and by wearing them too much, it's making things worse as well.
That's another inconvenience of the contacts, in my opinion. That's why another
Yeah,
reason why I stopped
you
wearing
can't
them,
just take them off.
I want to take my glasses off if I don't need them, but if I'm wearing contacts, I
Exactly.
would have to go into the bathroom, get my solution. It's just,
Right.
no, I'm not going to do that.
Exactly.
Right?
I
So,
will say the industry, there are some good things happening where we're doing a lot of what we call myopia control, which is kind of nice, and it is helping. So for kids who really, we know that they're not going to take their glasses off to read, or if the prescription doesn't work to take them off, then we add a little bit of a reading prescription to it, so that at least their eye muscles aren't focusing so hard when they read, and it tends to slow it down. And they do have contacts for people that actually have a little bit of reading in them, or have a way to help the body not have to force their eyes to focus so hard. And it really does, it has been shown, it really does slow things down quite a bit. And if you pair that with full spectrum sunlight, and again, not wearing them as much as, only wear them when you need them, then I think that's probably a healthier way to go. And with contacts too, if with contacts, some contacts allow UV light to come through, not many, there's not too many left, but people aren't going to take them out throughout the day. I mean, that doesn't really happen. So that's where it becomes a little bit of an issue.
yeah,
So
well,
should people?
so something I am doing is working, because my prescription is going backwards now. I had a history of
Good.
always getting worse. Well, now, since I do the
Mhm.
sunlight and I don't wear my glasses when I don't need them, my prescription's getting better. So something's
Good.
working.
That's great.
It makes
That's
it
great. Yeah.
motivating to keep it up.
Yeah. That's
Go
great.
ahead,
Yeah.
Laura.
We do find that there's a little shift also over time. Like sometimes it gets better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Question on, I'm at the other stage where my myopia has stabilized at least has for many years since I had LASIK. But now it's the reading glasses and the longer arm. And it's really just in dim light where I'm noticing
Right.
it.
Mm-hmm.
So a question I had for you, I mean, I don't know how to solve that. I guess two questions. Do you
Yeah.
have any suggestions of how to keep out of reading glasses? But the second question is, if I do get reading glasses, do you recommend, because I'm used to reading at night, blue blocking reading glasses? Does that even exist?
Yeah, I would definitely wear a fit over, right? If you had to, if you
No,
don't have
okay.
because I would say you would probably wear them and then put a fit over on top, because I don't think you can get orange reading glasses. At least, I mean,
No.
I guess you can on some of these sites, but none of the labs that I know of make them. As much as I've asked, can we make, I mean, I've asked my colleague, can we sell these? Can we have these orange glasses? But no one, like I said, there's no distinction between night and day. So reading glasses, again, in dim light, of course, the pupils are bigger, so you're not going to be able to focus. So people in a restaurant, it's
Yes.
probably one of the hardest times to read, and at night. And gosh, I wish I had a solution. I mean, it's just the lens in our eye. The collagen is growing. It gets thicker and thicker, and it loses its elasticity. It just gets stiff, and the muscles are fine. The ciliary body muscles that contract our lens, they're working. It's not
Okay.
that they're not working. It's just that no matter how much they work, there's only so much that lens can expand over time, and it just gets more rigid. And that's why we need reading glasses. And again, it's one of those, oh, it's an age thing. Now, I'm sure there are people I have in there, 55, who don't need reading glasses yet. And it's pretty amazing. Like, what are you doing differently? What are you doing?
That's me.
And
Yeah.
either, so I always want to know. And I feel like there are people who don't need it as early as others. And, maybe it has to do with dehydration and stuff like that. But I don't have a really good solution for it. I mean,
Okay.
bright light, some people, again, if you do have bright light over what you're reading, it does help, but you don't want to do that at night.
No.
So
No,
There are
exactly.
either Viva Rays or Raw Optics. There's somebody who at their checkout, instead of pressing prescription, you just press readers and then you pick your reader. So they do make them. You're going to just, you'll pay for another pair of blue blockers. It'll be for reading only.
Oh, that's good.
Okay, good to
Yeah,
know.
I know I've seen it. I know I've seen it. I just can't remember which brand it is. I believe it's either Raw Optics or Viva Rays.
So next question, again, going along this lines of all these interventions. What about corrective surgery? So I've got two aging parents, one who had cataracts and the other one, the cataracts aren't that bad yet. And the eye doctor's saying, oh, wait, let's hold off, 3 years. So I'm in that thought of, let's just hold off. It's surgery, but
Right.
also just putting in these UV. My understanding is the lenses have UV.
They do. They
Block
block
the
UV. They block
I
UV.
know. So I'm kind of trying to advocate to hold off that surgery because
Yes.
I want to say this
I know.
parent.
I'm
is actually
terrified
aging really
of getting
well.
to that
Yeah.
point and blocking UV. I know. And I don't know what the solution is, because I don't know of any lenses that don't. I mean, and it's possible that the lenses maybe are blocking 99.9%. Maybe it's not 100%. You never know. Sometimes
Okay.
they say,
Sounds good.
I don't know for sure. I feel like some of them might be a little bit better, but blocking UV now what do we do? It's really tough. The only thing we have to, there are some studies showing that some UV gets through the sclera, the white part of the eye, perhaps. And plus we have our
Okay.
skin with our UVA neuropsin receptors. So, if we've already had cataract surgery, we need to do the best we can with getting as much sun as possible or on our skin, to kind of use our skin as our second eye and make sure that everything is in that rhythm. We have our food on our rhythm. We're eating in season. We're doing all the things that we can to get as much of the signaling correct. And again, the UV light on our skin. So to kind of stave off cataracts, so again, we need to be really careful about blue light, of course. It used to be ultraviolet light was the thing. Everybody was told to wear sunglasses because ultraviolet light is what causes cataracts. And yes, of course, ultraviolet light can cause cataracts if you're in a place or if you're exposed to ultraviolet light, and maybe you don't get that morning signal of sun. Maybe maybe you're doing it the wrong way, or maybe you live in a really tropical place and you're out and getting those strong signals all the time. Of course it's damaging. It can be damaging, but we are finding that. I mean, I see cataracts in so many young people these days, and I ask, what are you doing? I'm on the screen all day long, and that's it. Do they go outside? No. Or they wear their sunglasses nonstop. So obviously it's not UV light. It's blue light. It's all this unbalanced oxidizing light. So we want to be really careful about that. What else can we do? I mean, there are some nutrients that you can look up and kind of, again, I don't really talk too much about taking supplements or anything, but again, we just want to do everything we can to be as healthy as possible. Obviously, smoking is going to make it worse. Diabetes makes it worse. And how do we get diabetes? One of the biggest risk factors is light at night. So we want to be careful. Any of these any conditions that create inflammation in the body can also create cataracts and macular, any eye issues as well. So we want to be just careful about that. Asthma medications can create cataracts, so many different things. So
it's okay.
We just want to try to stave that off. There are, what else? I'm drawing, I just forgot what I was going to say. We do want to make sure we're getting DHA, really healthy.
Yes, good point. Thank
fish,
you.
yeah.
Yeah,
Eating fish is really important. Again, we need that DHA. And again, that's also in the retina, but it can also help with just inflammation.
It's because the eye has so much DHA, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah,
The eye
talk
has so
about
much
that a
DHA.
little bit, because I know
Mhm.
that people don't understand the reason around that. So can you just talk a little bit
Right.
about DHA and the benefits?
Sure. So DHA makes up our cell membranes, and it's really highly concentrated in the retina. I would say probably more than anywhere else, because DHA is a healthy omega-3. It's from fish, right? So
Yes.
it's in a specific, we eat it from fish, specifically cold water fish, we're getting it in the correct form that gets absorbed through our body. So when we're eating it, it has it's full of all these electrons. So when anything that's electrical is also magnetic. So because it's full of so many electrons, when it's flowing through our body, the magnetism of all that mitochondria from the eye, because the eye is full of electrons and has like it kind of pulls that DHA into the eye and collects it and saves it. And DHI is used to create electrical signals from the sun. So we can do all of this
DC
stuff,
current,
right? The DC current, exactly. It takes the sun and it turns it into voltage. And we can do all these good things with the sun, but if we don't have DHA, none of it really works. So we need it for the eyes to be healthy. We need it for the retina. We need it for everything. I mean, DHA, the body doesn't use it as a fuel source. We can use fat as fuel in our body, but we don't use DHA because we need it so much in the cells of our eye, and it helps. It gets regenerated by the liver. It gets regenerated in the eye, but after a while, if we're not getting it in our diet, we're not getting it. So really important to get that DHA. And again,
not in fish oil, right? And it has to be
fish oil is really tough because most of it is oxidized or it's in the wrong form. And people will say, but what about plants? And in plant form, right? It's really hard to absorb that. We have to convert it. I think we only convert like 2% of plant sources of DHA, so it's not the best thing. So really, cold water fish, I would say, would be the best.
Okay, here's the last question on the whole, interventions section here. LASIK. I have LASIK and Dia.
Okay.
Did you have LASIK and Dia?
No, I don't. Okay. I have glasses. Yeah.
Well,
yeah. Knowing what I know now, I'm not sure. Well, it's so hard to say to turn back the clock because I've really enjoyed not being in classes for so many years. But I do know that there's some risks with it. Are people doomed? And I guess my specific question is, I didn't have my prescription wasn't that bad. It was,
what was it?
2.5 in both eyes.
That's not bad at all.
So I didn't have a lot. Does that mean I didn't have a lot scraped off?
Yeah, you didn't have that much. You didn't have that much shaved off with the laser. That's correct. Right. There's not that as much of it shaved down.
So I would still have some neuropsin in my cornea.
The thing with neuropsin, and I've tried to look through all the research. I don't know where it is in the cornea. I don't think they know. So I don't know. Maybe it's in the periphery of the cornea as well. Maybe it's throughout the entire cornea. That's what I'm hoping, because LASIK is really getting the center. So it's possible that maybe it doesn't damage at all. So we don't really know. I don't think they know exactly where it is, except that it is in the cornea.
Can you define neuropsin for our listeners?
Yes,
so sure. So
neuropsin is that UVA receptor that's collecting that ultraviolet A light to bring it into the eyes, again, just to establish the hormone making organ and all of those beautiful things that happen from that ultraviolet A. So when we have laser, the thought is that neuropsin is getting damaged because LASIK is basically, slicing the top layer of the cornea, lasering out some of the curve to flatten it so that the light's bending properly, and then putting that flap back on. So there's a potential that neuropsin has been damaged. And if it has been damaged, the thought is, well, are you getting that UVA? Is that really helping? But I don't know. I don't know if it's damaging it all. I'm hoping that it's not.
I just heard this one horror story of Dr. Jack Kruse talks about this.
I know.
Well, you heard that story about this woman so depressed, like within 3 weeks.
Committed suicide.
Yeah. And they linked it to this LASIK.
Right. I mean, it's possible. The other thing. Yeah. So, I mean, there's, of course, that possibility. And then there's also what I like to tell people who do want LASIK is that you just have to be really careful with blue light, because now the cornea is thinner than it was when it started. So
Right.
you're more susceptible to that damage because it's not protecting you as much.
That is
So
right.
if you really want LASIK, you want to be really careful with really getting that morning signal from the sun, really blocking the blue light, making sure you're blocking all of it, and being extra, maybe be outside for longer at that UVA rise if there's a possibility that there's some damage to that neuropsin.
I gotta
So
say,
we
wearing
have a,
blue
yeah.
blockers for a short time of the
Mhm.
day and not having glasses, has I would take that over wearing glasses all the time, so
Yeah.
if I had to
I mean,
turn
for
back
some,
the clock and yeah.
yeah. I mean, people do, people, some people do great with it. I mean, it really is life changing for someone who has a really high prescription and can't see their alarm clock, or for people who are sleeping in their contacts, which is even worse. So, sometimes there's people do well. It's just, there are some risks that we
Yes.
do have to make sure we educate people about.
Oh, I'm
So,
so glad you
but yeah.
you brought all that out. Okay, just
Here, before we leave this topic, I just want to touch on addiction for a minute, because we know
Mhm.
a lot of research around, because we're talking about some disease here. You told us before we were recording, optic nerve toxicity is very common. And I know
Mhm.
intraocular pressure with alcohol use disorder is common in the research that I found. Just curious, of the people that you've, in your 20 years, at least the ones who were honest and you knew maybe they were in recovery, or you knew they were truthful about like maybe how much they drank or whatnot, like just what have been your observations, or what would you say to that community?
So I have had a handful of patients, and I'd say I've been in practice now 21 years or so. And I could think of about a handful who had like optic nerve neuropathy, and it was from alcoholism. And
Okay.
what that looks like is, a loss of vision, a loss of the visual field. This was a long time ago. Had I had these patients now, knowing what I know now, I would truly say, do the best you can with getting, again, everything that we talked about, getting all the sun signals correct, just so we have a chance of keeping the nerve tissue that we have as healthy as possible. And again, making sure our melatonin is on board, our melanin, making sure you're getting all the sun, grounding, getting those electrons, doing all of the things that we need to do to keep our mitochondria healthy and our melatonin working well, getting the infrared light, doing all of those things, maybe even doing some red light therapy, things like that that really can try to improve as much as we can, because
Okay.
nerve damage doesn't necessarily, we want to preserve as much nerve tissue as possible. So I wish I had these patients. This was so long ago that I had these people. I didn't know anything other than sorry.
No,
There wasn't a whole lot to say.
that's helpful, and will give anyone with that hope. So no, thank
Mhm.
you for sharing that.
so that just the kind of last part, because you've answered already so many questions, but eye conditions. We've covered a few and touched on
Mhm.
glaucoma, touched on cataracts. Maybe we could you, I don't know if you just can bring them off the top of your head,
Sure,
but I
sure.
can tweak you on a few to
So I
just
feel like macular degeneration is a really big one that
yes,
people are
please.
super scared about, right? I mean, that's a
Yes.
big fear. And a lot of people will come in saying, it runs in my family and I'm really nervous about it.
Yeah.
And I say, okay, it runs in your family. Just because it runs in your family doesn't mean that you're going to get it. It's always the environment. There is a genetic component that could make you a little more susceptible to it. It is a little more common in people who have very light eyes, who have less melanin, because melanin is so protective of the macula. So in people who do have lighter eyes, we do have to be more careful. So again, with the macula, the reason why that happens is because the waste products of those photoreceptors have to be regenerated or taken care of by that retinal pigment epithelial layer. And when that layer is full of mitochondria, it has melanin. When any of those things are disrupted with oxidative stress of the mitochondria, for all the reasons that we discussed, blue light, lack of infrared, no nitric oxide for blood flow, dehydration because mitochondria is not working, lack of melatonin. Now, infrared light actually regenerates some of our rod receptors during the day, and melatonin will regenerate those photoreceptors at night. So all of those pieces need to be working well to have proper functioning of the macula. When we start getting these deposits called drusen, they're kind of waste products. It's kind of a fat and protein, and the retinal pigment epithelial layer has to just take that, regenerate it. And when they're running out of steam because everything's all damaged, then these drusen deposits can actually start to damage the layer of the macula, and then they start to coalesce, and then you can start getting scar tissue, you can start getting atrophy, you can start getting bleeding, and that's where the whole central vision, where people really can't read right in the center, that's where macular degeneration can go downhill. So when we have less oxidative stress and all the things that we talk about, there's less chance of getting that. So we want to be as careful as possible. Health conditions, people with, again, diabetes, blood pressure, any of these autoimmune issues, all the oxidation in the body, it tends to run, you can get macular degeneration a little bit more, because again, it's kind of that window into the body. Diabetes, that's another one, diabetic retinopathy with
AMD.
Elevated, yeah. Well, so AMD is
different condition. Sorry, not linked to macular degeneration.
So macular degeneration, that's one. And then there's another condition like diabetes, where you have bleeding in the eye. Again, that's diabetes is so highly linked to that artificial signal of light at night. So that's the most important thing we can talk about with people, is really just making sure that our blood sugar is regulated. Because when it's not, and you start getting these issues where the vessels get leaky, and then it stimulates new blood vessels to grow, that's a big problem. You can get all these different issues in the eye. It can lead to many, many issues.
I actually don't think we've talked, I don't know if we talked, Andia, yet about blood sugar and blue light and the connection.
Oh yeah, maybe just chat about that a little bit.
I don't know that we have.
Okay.
I might be going, what is there a connection to that? I thought it was just about eating
Yeah.
sugar and grains.
Oh, right. So perhaps, and what's interesting is, and when people have diabetes, and I tell them about this and say, the research is so powerful. It's such a shame that people aren't told this, but whenever we're exposed to light, blue light, especially at night, it's again stimulating those melanopsin cells to wake us up. And what does that mean? That means we're releasing cortisol. And when we're releasing cortisol at night, it's not supposed to be high. We're supposed to have low cortisol at night so that we can get tired, melatonin gets released. That increase in
the dance, melatonin and cortisol dance. Yeah.
Exactly. So when that cortisol is high, what does it do? It raises blood sugar. And right away, now you're raising blood sugar, you're going to get hungrier. It's going to mess with your insulin. It's going to mess with your leptin. It's just a diabetes risk factor is blue light at night, without a doubt. That's a very strong link. So we want to be really careful about making sure there's darkness at night.
Thank you for saying.
And that elevated blood sugar is really damaging to those retinal vessels, because they're so tiny and they're just susceptible to the elevated sugar. So you can start seeing leakage, and you can see all different lipids and exudates and all these different things that happen in the eye and in different patterns. And there's no symptoms usually, unless it's really bad. And then you can end up, God forbid, with retinal detachments if there's some pulling, if it gets really bad. And most people don't get to that stage anymore, because hopefully they have their eyes checked and it can be technically treated, although treatments aren't the best, because you're basically destroying tissue to treat it. But the best thing is prevention.
On retinal detachments, a family member recently got diagnosed with PVN, something vitreous.
PVD, posterior vitreous detachment.
Yeah,
I think that's
I don't actually didn't detach, but it's like some condition that they can kind of see kind of white crinkly stuff on one side, and it comes and goes. But is there a link with blue light with that? Do you think?
There can be. So the vitreous, that ball of jelly that makes up the inside of the eye with the collagen, the hyaluronic acid, and the water, when it gets dehydrated, the collagen will separate. So that's how you end up seeing floaters. But that entire ball of jelly is touching the retina. It has some very strong points where it's touching the macula, it's touching areas of the retina. So when it gets dehydrated, the whole membrane will pull away, and it becomes what we call a vitreous detachment, a posterior vitreous detachment. And when that happens, because it's stuck to the retina and it pulls away, it's yanking. Anytime that the retinal cells are activated, you'll see light. So people can all of a sudden see all these lights in an area, and then you see, usually you see this floating spot, because that membrane has condensed, and now you have this ball kind of floating in the center. Usually it's okay, but every now and then, as it's pulling, you can get a hole. It can pull the retina, and you end up with a tear, or you end up with a hole. And it can be linked to blue light, because blue light's oxidizing and dehydrating. So we want to be hydrated, and blue light is very easily dehydrating. People who are myopic, which can be also that whole light issue, also they have a very stretched out ball of the eyeball itself is very long. So it's stretching that ball of jelly, and it can also lead to more floaters and more of those retinal tears, retinal attachments. Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah.
And floaters, I heard you mention it's like an analogy or whatever to Humpty
Us-
Dumpty, and then what was it? Was those
The
those
snow
little
globe?
snow globe? Can you
The snow
explain
globe. Yeah,
that with
that's
floaters?
my
Does
favorite
that
one.
really
That's
clarify?
that's my favorite one because what people will say, what can I do? How can I get rid of them? And honestly, when the collagen is already separated from that hyaluronic acid and they're just floating, I don't know that you can get rid of them. There's anecdotal stories and people say they have, and maybe there's stuff that I haven't I haven't seen yet. I haven't
I've
seen
heard
that you can reverse.
castor oil.
Castor oil, yeah.
is
So
good
again,
health.
that's more for circulation. And for Dr. Jerry Tennant, he's talking about lymph and toxins and stuff where I feel like
lymph.
that could be an area where you can improve upon. And there are some floaters that come from inflammatory conditions. But in general, floaters will tend to sink. So it's like a snow globe, they just settle
Okay.
to the
Right.
bottom of the eye with gravity. And if you were to shake your head around, they kind of float up and you see them and then they come down. So sometimes when people will say they see floaters and I'm doing an exam and I'll say, look up and down real quick. And you see the floaters kind of float up and come down. So you want to make sure you see them, you understand what the patient is seeing, just that they do have floaters. So as far as Humpty Dumpty, I may have said that, in the sense that I don't know that you can put collagen and hyaluronic acid back together again. Like once you break an egg, you can't really put it back together, something like that. So, I don't know. It's probably better to prevent it than fix it. I have floaters I can't fix. They're everywhere. I've had them for years and I've done all the things and I still have floaters. So I don't know that they could be reversed necessarily, although people say, oh, I don't notice them anymore. That's why I say I think it's more that you don't notice that they sink. They tend to sink.
A big one would love you to touch on. I know we're probably getting on here in time, but is dry eyes and maybe even blepharitis, because I was told that after my LASIK, when they were doing the second exam, after it was done, I heard the eye doctor say, he was telling a student that was working with them and just listing off, and I heard blepharitis. So I just went home and went, what is that? What do I have? So could you touch on that?
Sure. The dry eyes is interesting. Well, LASIK is always going to cause dry eyes because they're cutting corneal nerves temporarily. So the eye literally loses the message to tear. Like there's no
It was
nerve
terrible, I have to
message.
say.
And sometimes those nerves don't heal in everybody. So a year out or 2 years out, they're still really dry. But most people heal within a month or two.
Mine was
but anyway,
5 weeks.
Was it? Okay. So that's pretty typical. The tear film has mucus, water, and oil, and we need all three layers to be in really good condition to keep our eyes healthy. So every time we blink, and we're supposed to blink every 10 seconds, it replenishes that tear film like a windshield wiper. And there's different reasons why those different layers can be affected. So if the mucus layer is affected by goblet cells, so that's, they all have a clock genes, they're all on a timer. So we have to make sure our circadian rhythm is right. But goblet cells can also make too much mucus if we have histamine issues. Like there's mast cells that can actually form and create excess mucus and all the issues that can also disrupt the tear film. So we have histamine, which can also be linked to circadian rhythm in the sense that when we're dehydrated, because we're not making that water, our body releases histamine. So that's also kind of linked to light. And the oil layer, the blepharitis, there's glands on our eyelids that every time we blink, they pump out oil. And that oil is so amazing because it's like that top layer that keeps the tears from evaporating. And we want it to just be in place. We want it to be really smooth. So I may have mentioned this, I think maybe when I was talking to Meredith, but that when we blink, for 10 seconds, that oil is supposed to stay in place. And most people, the tears break up so quickly that we're only blinking every 10 seconds. So after 5 seconds, the eyes are dried out. Those glands secrete oil. So we need everything to be working properly to secrete the proper amount of oil. If we're eating, if we're having too many seed oils, we don't have the right oil composition, or maybe our liver's not working right. We need oil to be great. We need the oil to be flowing. Inflammatory conditions can block oil production. Hormones can block oil production. All the things, everything has an effect on the eye. So in order to help, we always talk about hot compresses and just trying to really kind of soften that oil and just massage it so that those glands get activated and can secrete more oil. But that's a big problem. Blepharitis is really common, and just staring at screens contributes to it, because in addition to the blue light that's oxidizing and dehydrating, we're also not blinking when we're on a screen. We just don't blink. And not blinking is a very stressful thing for the eyes. Not only are our tears evaporating, but our body's just very stiff and the eyes get stiff and it's just this, screens are just horrible for us. So yeah, did I answer your question? So just dry
Yeah.
eyes in general is blue light's a really big problem.
It's
Wi-Fi,
okay.
yeah.
Wi-Fi, right, yeah.
Mhm.
Andia, help me. Have I missed any conditions that we want to talk about?
No, I think that we covered a lot of base here.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, one important question, because I have
Okay,
boys in
one
their
more.
in their 20s. Phototopia.
Oh, photophobia.
It's a
Right.
photophobia. I wrote it. Okay,
You just being really sensitive to
the sun.
sunlight, is it?
Are you seeing that more today
Oh
with
yeah,
with gamers? Or
absolutely.
I've seen it with
Oh my gosh,
post-concussion, but yes.
absolutely. I mean, it is unbelievable how much photophobia there is. What's interesting, one of the offices where I work, everyone comes in asking for tinted windows because they're photophobic, and they are, but I am a stickler. I will not give anyone tinted windows, first because I just won't, I want to tell them how to fix it. But also I'm not just going to hand out tinted windows because it's my license on the line. I'm not just going to do that. But I will say that well, I can't handle the sun. And it's because we're getting so much fake light. The blue light is destroying us so that we can no longer handle any sunshine because we're just bombarded by the blue light. So when we're gaming,
Is it the pupil, you call it?
yeah, so what it's doing is it's stimulating kind of that sympathetic system, and it's keeping our eyes more dilated. So the eyes cannot constrict the way they're supposed to when the light hits it. And that's going to create photophobia. And the other thing that's interesting is that when we're wearing sunglasses, our pupils are more dilated than they should be. When we go outside, we're supposed to know exactly what to do. The pupils are kind of our window to how much light we're getting. So if we're always wearing sunglasses and we go outside, now our pupils are more dilated than they would have been if we were not wearing sunglasses. So even though we're blocking the intensity of the light, we're still almost letting more light through the eyes than we should, because it's just the wrong signal, which isn't a good thing. So that's going to create more photophobia, because now we're not getting the full spectrum of light. We're not letting our eyes kind of adapt to light properly.
It's just
And when
compounding it.
yeah, it's horrible. It really is. And especially gaming, right? I mean, it's all night. A lot of these people are on the screens all night long with their blue light. They're not wearing any glasses to help, and they're just a mess. They can't handle. And I said, you're already cooked by so much fake light that you cannot handle any sunshine. So that's where we really want to just start with sunrise.
Sunrise.
5 minutes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, as slow as you can, and just builds up. And it does get better rather quickly, but you really have to. It's also hard because these are the people that don't want to wake up early enough for sunrise because they've been up all night gaming. So, it's a tough, tough thing to change, but it can
And
be
maybe
done.
blue blockers.
Yeah, blue blockers at night, of
doing it
course,
on both
especially
ends,
while
right?
gaming. To start with that, absolutely.
So we have a signature question, but we're gonna put a twist on it. What does it mean to you to have quantum healthy eyes or quantum healthy vision?
That's a good question. So I think, anybody who is able to wake up in the morning, doing all the things, assuming that we're doing all the things we're supposed to, the eyes just not having any issues, right? Not waking up with the eyes just uncomfortable, and most people wake up and like, oh, my eyes are horrible when they wake up. They're teary. Like people who wake up just refreshed, right? They don't feel dry in the morning. They're refreshed. They're able to focus in all different areas. Again, needing glasses, I don't think that's so, that's not horrible if you need glasses, but just having healthy eyes, healthy tear film, nice fresh corneas with no blood vessels, no cataracts, beautiful retina, not having any thinning, all of the things, having good, nice pink, healthy nerve tissue, just eyes that are meant to work the way they're supposed to. Good contrast sensitivity, just no discomfort, no headaches, no ocular, related headaches, no migraines, just eyes the way they're supposed to be. Eyes that are working as a clock, working as a hormone making organ, able to see vision, all the colors properly, just able to take it all in, have really people who have all of our side vision intact, just really, living the way we're supposed to through that particular sense is just really a gift, I think.
That
answers your question.
Yeah,
that's lovely.
I have new quotes from you now to add to my list. I think one of them was earlier on, actually, you said the body runs on time based on sunlight. I love that. I'm going to adopt that one.
Oh, yeah, I'll capture it.
Yeah, that's so good. Okay, before you go, can you share us? Do you have, what are your offerings? Are you coaching people outside of being an optometrist?
I started, yes. So since I'm doing Zoom consults now, that's kind of what I've been offering. So I don't, during my eye exam, I'm doing regular eye exams. And again, I educate people, but I don't have time to really go through everything. So anybody who needs help with kind of incorporating all of these quantum strategies, related to eyes in general, but it relates to the whole body, no matter what, even if it's just the eyes, you're still going to improve your whole body. So yes, I'm working with people via Zoom. I've made time on my days off to help that. Ultimately, I would love to do some classes and workshops and stuff, but right now I'm just working on a Zoom, just consults one-on-one. Yes.
One step at a time. You're busy enough. Yeah. And by the way, Andia, we have to bring her into the quantum mom category.
Yeah.
With your story of helping your son. Yeah, we've got a few people. Episode by episode, we've been noticing all these wonderful moms who've actually changed their children's lives through this knowledge and applying it.
Yeah, I feel like that's the, when something happens to a child, that's one of the best ways to make a change, right? Just all those things. You do anything you can and go from one rabbit hole to the next. And it really is. So
yeah,
it's a good thing.
Well, Andia, do you want to take us out on this one?
Yeah. Where can people find you? And anything that you want to add as well?
So I have, as we said, I have my Instagram, and I also have some videos on YouTube, kind of a more teaching platform, and it's Quantum Eye Doc. And then there's some links there where you can, if you are interested in working with me, there's some links and stuff within those pages. That's kind of all I have right now.
Oh, well, that's awesome. I didn't know you had a YouTube, so I'm happy I asked. All right. Well, this was absolutely wonderful and is going to be so informative. I think that everyone we all have eyes. I find it very fascinating. I think I'd find it fascinating even if I didn't have glasses. And I'm so happy you asked about that last question about the photosensitivity, because I have people that will say to me, well, I can't go out in the sun. I was too sensitive. I didn't know there was a name for it. So thank you for all of that. All right. I'll make sure I link to everything, and everyone listening, thank you so much. And we will see you next time.
Thank you so much for listening to the Quantum Healthy Podcast. We hope you found some value in this information. And if you feel inspired, please share it and leave us a 5-star review. This will help us reach so many more people. If you want to connect with Laura, you can find her at laurakismanwellness.com and Andia at andiaray.com. Links are below in the show notes. Now, go find some sunlight and embrace your own quantum healthy.